Welcome to today's webinar presentation on Hidden Treasures of iVend Retail POS Part 1. This is a two-part series that we're holding this month. My name's David Webb and I'll be your presenter today. So the topics we're looking at today, we're looking at forecasting and replenishment, merchandise hierarchies, product gross margin, price manager, and we're having a little bit of a look at, to finish off with locations, just with the adjustments, so doing receipts and goods issues and adjustments. So just some of the things to keep in mind when you're dealing with locations and wanting to do or perform some adjustments to stock. So one of the first topics we're going to be looking at will be forecasting. So you can use forecasting within iVend to estimate your sales moving forward to the future based on historical data. You can preview near future sales based on a similar period from historical data from a similar period. So perhaps look at the next 3 months based on historical data from a similar period in the past. We can generate forecasts based on a product groups, merchandise hierarchies, and even user-defined categories that we define within the system ourselves. Forecasting features are available for iVend Unplugged, and it is also going to be available for customers using iVend integrated with an ERP system from iVend version 6.5.4, which is the current release. So where do we find it? The tools that we're looking for are within the management console, located under operations, business transactions, and we see forecast planning and replenishment within that sub-menu. So we've just got a couple of screenshots there. The replenishment module process that helps retailers to avoid the situation where insufficient stock can occur to meet the demand that is occurring within their retail outlets. It's used to assist the purchase department in generating orders and stock transfers. So the module will make recommendations for bulk generation of purchase orders and stock transfers. And we just got a point there to note that in the presentation today you will see that in the current version we're referring to the replenishment as replenishment, but in earlier versions of iVend you'll see that it's referred to MRP. So it's a point to remember that customers using earlier versions of iVend, the replenishment functionality that we're looking at today is referred to as MRP in earlier versions. So we'll have a look at the steps required to set up a product to be considered in the replenishment module in the MRP. So there's some settings within the product that we'll have a look at just to show you what the different options are for whether you want to select or generate a purchase order, a stock transfer, or create kits for those products that are designed to be kits. So replenishment is in the same area as the forecasting, so under the management console, operations tab, and you'll locate it under business transactions. And within the replenishment scenario, we can run it to just take into consideration the settings within the product, or we can also take into account any forecast plan that we've created. So we'll have a look at the impact of that when we actually do a replenishment scenario later on in our demo. We'll show you the different options and the different output that we'll get when we take into consider those different settings. We'll then go on to look at product gross margin and also price list manager. So there's two tools within iVend that allow you to create recommended prices based on your product gross margin, and the second option that we'll have a look at is generating a price or price list based on other prices within the system. So we'll look at those two different areas today to make suggestions for prices. So the first option we'll have a look at there will be the product gross margin, and that's located under operations in your pricing and your promotions area, and then we've got the price manager, which is the second option, and we'll go through the different settings there. So you can run it in a simulation mode or draft mode, and we'll just point out the areas that you need to consider with that to run a simulation and the care that you should take with that as well. So price manager, it's allowing retailers to manage product prices lists based on other prices, as I said, and you've got the ability to use different factors to calculate the suggested prices. So the price manager located in the same area of the management console under operations, pricing and promotions. We also have a draft mode to run in simulation, and I'll go through that and explain that in a little bit more detail. Then we'll just finish off, as we said, on locations. This is not a full review on the locations functionality. It's just a brief topic to focus on how to deal with locations when you're wanting to make some stock adjustments. Let's switch over to the management console and we'll just run through the presentation and demo. So I've got the management console open, and the first thing we're going to have a look at is our forecasting. So once again, management console, we're in the operations tab and we're under the main menu item business transactions, and if we scroll down we'll see that we've got a number of options here. We've got replenishment, forecast planning, and our forecast. So the first area we'll actually have a bit of a look at is our forecast planning. I'll just click that. We've already got a couple of forecast plans that we've already created in the system, and I'm just going to select this one here that we've got for the current year, and I'm just going to open that up just to have a bit of a look at the settings there. So we've just given it a code and a description, and this can be freeform, anything that you like that will make it easy for you to search and look up your forecast plans. You can sort of see here that we've got historical sales and forecasting for the year. So basically we're going to be looking and basing the forecast plan on what we've got in the system for historical sales. And what we've got in here is we're going to base the plan for 2017. Typically it would be probably the previous year, but we've got 2011 there, and we're going to base the historical sales for the current year, 2017. Now I just want to show what are we going to base this on. So this particular forecast plan is we're basing it on a particular product range. The settings that we've got here though are we can base it on a product category, a product group, or even a merchandise hierarchy. I'm just selecting product for this particular presentation, and we can put in our range. So from to, I'm selecting just a single product for this presentation to generate it fairly quick. And what we've got here as the next settings is whether to consider refunds in my forecast plan, and I've selected to include refunds to get probably a more accurate projection. If there was a significant number of refunds, you might want to consider that. So I've just put the one product in, as I said. Then you've got down the bottom here, we've got our warehouse selection, and you've got a button down the bottom here. So if you've got a large number of stores that you want to include in your forecast plan, you can just use the button there to quickly select them all, and I've just got the two here. So I'm going to do a forecast plan looking at my online store and my physical store. So I'm just going to click on OK to that to save it. So the next step is to have a look at our forecasting. So back on our operations tab, business transactions, just under forecast planning, we've got the option forecast, and I'll just click on that. So this opens up the forecast plan, and you can see here that we can then, up the top, we can select from our available plans. So on the radio button here, I can just select there, select the plan that we just looked at, bring that in, and as I've already run this, we see the last saved forecast that was generated. But before we get to that, I just want to show up the top here, we've got the forecasting methods and some forecasting sub-methods. So let's have a look at what's available here. So we've got a number of industry standard methods that are included in the solution. Now we're not going in to explain what each one of these are. This presentation is more just to show you the functionality on forecasting. If you're wanting an explanation on what the different methods are, there's a number of different websites that you can go to get detailed information on these different methods that you can use, and even the calculations. And I'll just bring up Wikipedia is a good site that I would recommend that you could go to that gives a number of links and a different explanation on the methods. Like I said, they are industry standard methods, and you can see here some quite detailed information on the different methods if you want to get information like that. So this is one site that I would recommend that you could have a look at. So what have we got up the top here? Exponential smoothing, Box-Jenkins, simple moving average, and so on. Now depending on what you select in here, there may be some sub-method options as well. So if I select exponential smoothing, for instance, we get a number of different other sub-options that we can select from. Now what we recommend though is what we call our expert selection. And expert selection will allow the system to best calculate what method based on your historical sales to use. So when you generate your forecast, it will look at the historical sales from what you've stipulated in your plan, and it will calculate what's the best method that it recommends to create your forecast. So you can sort of see here, to generate it, all you have to do is once you've made your selection, so up the top here, we can view, run the forecast based on a quantity or an amount. If we select amount, then you've got to choose your price list. And there's a radio button there to look up your price lists. We ran this on quantity, however. And then when you're ready to run the calculation, it's just generate the forecast. You can just run it there. Then you'll get the results here, and over here you'll see that we've got the different warehouses listed as per what was listed and selected in my forecast plan. And if we click on the little arrow here, it might be a little bit hard to see, but if we click on that, we can expand the results. And you can see here for this one, for this product, the forecast that was used, remembering that we used export selection, it decided to use the calculation data. And if we expand it out for the second warehouse and we click on that, we can see that for this particular one it decided to use exponential smoothing based on the historical data. Now, one of the things that I want to show is that it's made these calculations for the forecast, but you do then have the flexibility to manipulate these or modify or tweak these figures. So it's forecast these results, but if you want to change any of these, you can do it within the worksheet that we see here by just clicking on the column. So we've got July here, and if we double click on the column, it'll open up a working area and you can see some more detailed information, and we can see the quantity, and we can override the value. So if we wanted to override it, we can do that, and we can put a remark there if we wanted to explain why we've overridden it, and you can see we've overridden it there. Now, I also want to draw your attention to the fact that we can also export the data. So if you've got a lot of records, we've only put the one product in here, of course, but if you've got a lot of products that you're doing a forecast on and you want to do some modifications and some tweaking of the forecast figures, what you can do is you can export it out, and it will export it out into an Excel spreadsheet in very similar format. Now, the columns will look very similar in the output to what we see here. Then you can go through and tweak the columns according to the changes that you desire, and it's just an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can then go back and re-import the changes back into your forecast. So I'm just going to go OK on that. So we saw very quickly the results of that generating the forecast off our plan, and the next step was to then look at using that forecast in our replenishment. Now, our replenishment, as I said in the slides, we've got a number of different methods we can use. We can do a replenishment just based on the settings within the products themselves, and or we can choose to also include our forecast in the replenishment model as well. So what settings do we have on our product that we need to consider to be able to use the products in our replenishment model? So if we go to inventory, and I'm going to select products, I'm just going to do a search. So let's have a look at a product. I'm just going to select one of these products. We'll go into edit, and it's view inventory is where you can make the settings that you want to consider for the MRP. So we've got our products sitting in different warehouses, so I'm just going to look at the settings, say highlight my Avenue store, and if you scroll right over to the right here, just do it slowly so we can all see, we've got some settings here for MRP. So we've got minimum stock, maximum stock, replenishment, and very important, consider in our MRP, and we've got some other settings here for minimum order and fulfillment warehouse. So what are the different options? If we want to consider the product in the particular warehouse, the first column to consider is consider an MRP. So you can see here for this particular product, we've already got these boxes ticked, and then we need to think about what replenishment method we want for this particular product. So what we've got here is we can see local purchase, and what are the different options. So if I click on the box, we can see local purchase, which means to generate a purchase order with the local vendor. Transfer, so if we want to set that we're going to make the replenishment process make recommendations for stock transfers, we can select that, but then we need to say, well, which warehouse is going to be the replenishing warehouse. The other option is for kitting. So if the product is a kit product or the result of a kit, we can select to make recommendations for building kits based on child products that make up that kit. We're going to leave it as local purchase because we want to generate recommendations for purchase orders. Okay, so those are the settings within the product. Now we'll come back to our operations and we'll go back to our business transactions and we're going to have a look at our replenishment option here. So I've got one here that I've prepared, so I'm just going to open that. Once again, let's have a look at all the different settings. Up the top here we've got a code, we've got a description, so just something meaningful to you to make it easy for your lookup. It's just a free-form field that you can use to fill that in. The next fields we've got are to do with the start date and the end date. So the start date needs to be equal to the current date or earlier. You do have a little lookup calendar here so that if you wanted to select a date from the calendar, or alternatively you can just type it in. So we've taken it from the beginning of June and we're going to run our recommendations up to the end of the current year. What are the options? So let's have a look. We can run it on product, product category, product group, and if we have a look here, we've already put in our product. So remembering that we selected this particular product in our forecast plan, so we want to do this replenishment model, but obviously we could run it for a wide range of products if we wanted to. So next options are, do we want to make recommendations for purchases? Yes, we do. We know that in this particular case, in this scenario, we don't actually have any stock transfers, but if we wanted to also make recommendations for stock transfers, we could include that. The purchase recommendation type is we've got local purchase or all purchases. Now all purchases means to actually have a look at all the warehouses within your selection criteria and make recommendations for all. If you want to choose just the local purchase, it will only make recommendations for your actual warehouse for the management console that you're logged into. So some of these settings will only be available at the enterprise level, and if you're running it from the store, some of these settings won't be available because it will be limited to the particular store that you're at. Let's just leave it at all purchases because we want to make recommendations for all the warehouses that we've selected. Now we can choose to include in this run for recommendations our plan, but let's just leave it out for a minute just so that we can see what the recommendations are based on just the selection criteria that we looked at in our products. Down the bottom here we've got a select all button, which just simply the selection to select all or deselect all, and then you can just select the ones manually here. So I'm going to run this, and we've got recommendations here for an order quantity based on the settings that we had in our product master. So it's going to look at things like what was the replenishment type that we wanted, remembering that we selected local purchase, so we can see here that it's making recommendations for a purchase order, and the order quantity that it's going to look at is based on, I'll just bring up a little spreadsheet here, it's going to take into account the existing inventory plus any open orders and transfers, less any orders, forecasting, layaways, minimum stock levels, open stock transfer requests, and then we get the final inventory recommendations. So the figure that it comes up with, the recommendation in this case, isn't taking into account any forecasting. It's purely based on just the settings that we had on our inventory master. Now at this time we could select all, as we've done here, and we could post it by just clicking the button. Before we do that though, because we've selected purchase orders, we would need to select a vendor. So we could look up a vendor, and then it would generate a purchase order recommendation using the vendor that we selected here. Now if we've put a preferred vendor on the product master, then it would pre-populate this field with that preferred vendor. What we're going to do though is just cancel this for a minute and come back now, and what we're going to do up here is we're going to select our plan that we used earlier and just see the difference in the recommendations. The other part that we need to consider, what we need to take into account, are our locations. So consider existing inventory from the following locations. So if you are using locations and you want to take into account the stock that you already have in these locations, then you need to be sure to select those locations. Otherwise it will look at the gross recommendations based on the minimum stock levels. So let's run it again, and now we see an extra line up the top here for our recommendations based on our forecast, and we can see recommendations. If you remember, we made a change to our order quantity for that item, and that's now come into play using our forecast. It will make recommendations for purchase orders. Let's just select this row here. I'll select a vendor, go OK, and we'll post it. Make sure we don't proceed, yep. So what that will do is it's going to go off and create that purchase order. So if we have a look at our business transactions, I'm just going to go into purchase orders, and here's the purchase order, and we can go and view that. So that purchase order has now just been generated from that run. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll now go and have a look at our next topic, which is the merchandise hierarchies. So I'm just going to go to inventory, and under inventory we've got an option called merchandise hierarchies. So in our demo system we've got a number of different options already available. So we've got apparel, so we might just open one of these up. We've got apparel, footwear, luggage, and there's no limit to the different merchandise hierarchies that you can create. And what I'm going to do is I'll just open one up, but what we'll do is we'll actually create one just to run through all the steps. So I'm just open that up, edit or view, and we can see that this particular merchandise hierarchy, apparel, has got 4 levels, and let's have a look at the structure. So at the top we've got what we call the root node, apparel, and then we go down and we look at the child node. So with the next level down we've got menswear, and that's broken into formal wear and the lowest level tops. We've got ladies wear, casual wear, bottoms, and then we've got another node called kids wear or children's wear, and we've got 2 sub-nodes, boys and girls, and bottoms, tops and bottoms. So you can see how we can actually define the different levels to be quite different from each other and build a hierarchy. Now the products will be added at the lowest node, and then you'll get a summarization. As you scroll up in the hierarchy, you'll get a totaling summary of the results. So we'll get totals at the tops and bottoms, then at the girls, and then a subtotal at the boys level, and then you'll get a subtotaling at the kids wear, ladies wear, men's wear, and then you'll get a grand total at the apparel level. Well, what we're going to do is just show you how we can simply, very quickly create a merchandise hierarchy. We'll do some sales then at the point of sale after we've created our merchandise hierarchy, and then we're going to see where these merchandise hierarchies come into use for us, how quickly we will be able to view those in our merchandise hierarchy dashboards. So the beauty of this is that we can create a reporting structure by just creating a simple structure, and it will come into our dashboard reporting automatically. We don't actually have to then go and create reports from these. So let's go through the process. We'll create the hierarchy. Then we'll add a selection of products to the hierarchy, and we'll create some transactions, and then we'll go and have a look at it. So you're going to see how easy this is to do and how quickly we can build this and then go and view the results in a report. So I'm just down the bottom here, I'm going to select new, and what I've decided to do is I'm just going to create a merchandise hierarchy based on beverages. So let's just do that, just give it that code, a description. So I'm just going to give it the same, beverages. And I'm going to create a hierarchy level of just 3 levels. We want to make sure we leave the enabled flag ticked, so this will be available for us to use and report on. So down the bottom here we've got some buttons. So first of all we need to create our root node, so I'm just going to click on that, and you'll see over on the right hand side it's created our first level. So all we need to do is click next to the tick box that we see here, and I'm going to put in my description for that. While I've got that selected, I'm now going to add my sub-levels in here, or my child nodes. So down here, add child node, click back up here next to the tick box that it's created, and I'm going to create a reporting level called hot beverages. I'm going to have 2 levels here, hot beverages and cold beverages. So to create another level, child node at the same level as hot, I need to click back up on my beverages or my parent node, and I select add. You can see how it's now nested that under beverages and put it at the same level as my hot beverages. Just click on the tick box next to it, type in the description that I want. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a couple of levels under my hot beverages, and I'm going to add a couple of levels under my cold beverages. So first of all, let's click back next to on the hot level and click on our child node. You can see now that it's nested a level down under hot. So I'm just going to click next to that and type in the description I want. So this one I'm going to put in as coffee. So I want to create another level under hot beverages. So I need to click back up here next to hot, click on the child node, add child node, and this one I'm going to put in soups. So now I've got that for my hot beverages. Under beverages, I've now got beverages, hot, coffee, and soup. And now what I want to do is create some child nodes under my cold beverages. So I've clicked on the cold level, click on add node, and you can now see how we've added a level under cold drinks. So I'll just click next to that, put a description in. We're going to call this sports. Let's click back on cold, add another child node, and you can see it's put that next to sports. Click next to that, and let's call this health. Okay, so you can see how quick and easy it is to actually add the structures in. If you make a mistake, you do actually have the delete node button, so it's not the end of the world. If I do accidentally put one in the wrong area, I could select that particular node and delete the node and then just go back and make the corrections that I want to do. So we're happy with our structure. You don't add the products in here. I'll show you where you go to add your products to this hierarchy. So I'm just going to click on OK, and you can see now that we've added our merchandise hierarchy beverages here. So we can just go OK to close the window. And if we go to inventory, products, under inventory, and I'm just going to filter my search criteria on my product group, do a search on drinks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of these drinks to that merchandise hierarchy. So first one is, let's have a look at this top one. It's coffee. So we're going to click on that and go into edit. And down the bottom here, we'll see that there's a button here called merchandise hierarchy. So what I'm going to do is click on that, and we've got add and delete. I'm going to click on the add, and it brings up the merchandise hierarchy search. And here's my hierarchy that I've just created. So let's do that. Do is our hierarchy detail. We've got a little radio button to the side here. I'm just going to click on that, and it allows me to then select the node. Now remember you're adding the products to the lowest node. So remember it's a coffee product, so we're just going to select that. You don't need to select the higher levels. All you need to do is select the lowest level, and it will automatically create the hierarchy details. So we'll just go OK, and you can see what it's done here. It's gone beverages, hot drinks, and then coffee. So it's put the hierarchy detail there. If we make a mistake while we're doing this, we do actually have the delete button. So the delete button though is purely for when you're working on creating and adding your products to the hierarchy. Once you've added it into the hierarchy, you're not able to delete the hierarchy that you've actually added in here. So you need to be careful with that. So your add delete buttons are purely for the editing and adding as you're working on it. So let's go OK, and that's added that one, and click on OK again to confirm it. Now the next product, let's go and quickly add in the other products that we want to add to that hierarchy. So the next one was a soup, and we're looking at product 44 for that. So let's go in there. Merchandise hierarchy, add, select beverages, OK, and soups. And we want to add sports drink, and you can see how quickly we've added those in. Click OK. Okay, so we've got our hierarchy, we've got our products in our hierarchy, and what we need to do now is go and just quickly process a sale at the POS using those products. All right, so we've got our 4 products that we've got in our merchandise hierarchy. I'm just going to do a quick cache complete. Complete that. All right, so the thing to remember with this is that using merchandise hierarchies, it'll only look at, once you've created your merchandise hierarchy, it's only going to look at the sales to be included in that reporting from the time that you make that merchandise hierarchy. It won't look at historical sales, so it is from that particular point in time after you've created the hierarchy. So let's go and have a look at some reports, dashboards. So this is the nice feature, I would say, is that once we've created our hierarchy and done our sales, it comes into our dashboards automatically. So I'm just going to select one here, merchandise sales. Open up that dashboard. Okay, and if we have a look here, you can see without even doing any edits or changes to our reports, all I've done is I've gone and created my merchandise hierarchy, added the products to it, start transacting and selling the products, and it comes into my merchandise dashboards automatically. So we can see here, here's my beverages, and if I expand that, you can see the different reporting levels. So we can see the quantity total, the sale total, and as we drill down, we start to get the subtotaling, as I mentioned when I was building the hierarchy. We can now see subtotal quantity and sales value for cold drinks and hot drinks, and then if we drill down, we can see the subtotaling for coffee and soups and the health drinks and the sports drinks. So you can see how nicely that's automatically come into that report. So that ends the quick little presentation on merchandise hierarchies. The next topic that we were going to look at were around making price recommendations based on gross product margin and also on what we call the price manager. What we can do is with price manager, we can build a new price list based on an existing price list. First one that we're going to have a look at though is our gross product margin. So under operations, click on that, pricing and promotions, we've got two options. If we scroll down, we can see that we've got product gross margin and then price manager. So the first one we're going to have a look at is product gross margin. So I'm just going to select that. So what we've done is I've just created one earlier for today's presentation. So just click Edit to have a bit of a look at that. So what we can do, we have a look at this. We've just given it a code and a description. The next option is to select the price list. Now this is going to be the target price list for where the changes are going to take effect. So this is quite a powerful tool and you need to be very careful here. So caution here is what I would recommend is when you come in here, you do want to make sure that you put it into draft mode straight away so that while you're working on it, all the calculations that you see are purely going to be in a simulation and won't actually generate the actual updates to the system. You do get a couple of warnings, but it would be very, very easy to proceed and then actually go and make changes to the price list that might be unintentional. Another good point, take a backup. Before you make any changes like this, especially if it's a bulk update, you want to make sure that you've taken a backup of your system, especially if you're going to be doing a large number of changes. So what have we got? Different options. We can round, and in this particular scenario I've done rounding to round up to the nearest, and I've put round up to the nearest dollar. So this particular one we can actually see I've only done it on the one product, and we've got our current cost and we've got some different calculations, and I've done a markup of 200%, and if we scroll across here it made a recommendation based on the criteria that I put here, and the recommendation was for $34. You can see how the buttons are grayed out here because I actually committed this change and it then went through and updated my price list. So what we're going to do is we're going to create one from scratch just so that we can see the different settings. So I'll come back out of here, F3 for new. Let's just give it a code, something simple. So like I said, this could be whatever you liked. Right, I'm going to make my price list 1, which is my store's price list, my target. You can see that once I select the price list here, it automatically brings in all the products that are linked into that price list automatically for me. What are the rounding options? I can go round to or ends with, and then I'm going to select rounds to. And what are the rounding options? The rounding options are round up, round down, or round to nearest. I'm going to say round up, and I'm just going to say round to the nearest dollar. Now, as I'm working on this process, I could just select to filter the results by saying just show those items where there is a price change, and it will just then filter the results based on where there would be a price change recommended. Now, put it into draft mode while you're actually working through the process and making your recommendations to ensure that you are only running it in simulation. Now, down the bottom here, we've got some buttons. We've got select all. If I select that, you can see how it's now selected all the items for me. I can unselect all. If I select clear the records here, it will clear all the products out of this list, and then I would need to then go in and add the products manually one by one, or control and collect and select a number of products to add in here. I can delete products by selecting and go delete the product from the list. Let's just select the one product. What are the different columns that we've got here? the current cost of the product. We've got a what if cost, I'll come back to that in a minute. We've got the current price, so the current price that is actually sitting in the price list. If you saw my previous worksheet, we saw that the last update to that was $34, and we can see that that's actually coming in here. Then we've got the margin percentage, we've got a markup, and we've got a coefficient, we've got a suggested price. We scroll across here. And then we've got suggested price rounded. Now that's rounded based on what the criteria is up here that we've set, and you can see that we set it to be to the dollar. So the suggested price $11.23, and it's rounded it up to $12. Now we recommend the two columns that you want to look at to work with, the simplest to follow, would either be the markup column or your coefficient. Now your coefficient column is purely the suggested price divided by the current cost. So by just changing that up, you can sort of see here, just change that to 2, you can see how that's automatically recalculating the other columns here. It's worked out the suggested price on a coefficient of the current cost. Alternatively, what I would recommend is that you could just look at the markup column here. So if we put in something like 200% markup, for instance, you can see how it's automatically working out the coefficient. So it's sort of saying 3 times the current cost to work out what the suggested price is, and we can see what it's done here, rounding it up to 34. The margin percent is purely a calculation of what the difference being the suggested price and what that percentage is less the current cost, so that value worked out as a percentage. So the other column here that is a calculated column field that we can take into consideration as well is that we're doing this calculation at the moment based on what our current cost is. So the current cost is recorded against the product, and our product master is where we can control the cost. But we might be in the know that maybe our costs are going to go up or down for that particular product. So what we could do in here is we could say, well, we know that perhaps the product cost is going to go up in the near future, is going to go up to 15. So we can do a what if scenario, and over here you'll see what it's automatically done is it's now made a change to the suggested price based on that what if cost scenario. So we could do that. I'm going to just put it back, 23. But what I want to do is I'm going to say change that to 300%, and at the moment that's going to make a suggested price of $44.92 rounded up to 45. So what I can do now is you can see here at the moment I'm still in draft mode, so I could just click OK. All that will do is when it's in draft mode is save my recommendations. It won't commit anything to the price list. So I can go out, I can continue to work, I can come back and continue to work on this process over time, and then when I am ready to make the final commitment, all I would need to do is to remove the draft mode and click OK. Now if I do that, it will give me some warnings, only the selected records. So we click no for a second and we come back here. What that's saying is only the records that are selected to be committed will be updated. So we go yes, and it's now gone and done that commitment. So you can see where I caution about being in draft mode or not. Obviously this is a feature that you would only allow certain admin people that are responsible for pricing to have access to, and you can control who would have access to this via who has management console user access, I guess, but also in the security user authorizations for their profile. So if we have a look, we've made that commitment. So if we go and actually have a look at our price list, I'm just going to bring up the price list. Here's my price list. Just going to go in there. I'm going to do a bit of a search on that product, and if we have a look over, if we scroll over, we can see that it's now committed that price. All right, that was product gross margin. The next one is price manager. So let's click F3 new. So the previous one was looking at the cost of the product to make recommendations to update the prices within the target price list. This price manager option will make recommendations for a new price list based on an existing price list. Let's give it a code. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make recommendations for a price. So I've got a look up here. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to create a new price list. I'm going to select price list 10, and I'm going to base the prices that I'm going to create for price list 10 based on my store price list. So I'm going to select price list 1 and go OK. Now what I need to do, the next step, is to select the warehouse. So I'm going to click the avenues, my store. And once I do that, once I select the price list with the store, then the products are automatically populated into my worksheet here, ready for me to go to the next step. So I've got various different options here on how to adjust the price. As is the default, but we've got different calculation methods we can do by adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, direct amount. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to select add, and when I've got add, I've got two different options here. For instance, I can do an amount or a percentage recommendation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select percentage, and I'm just going to put in, say, 25%. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to deal with my rounding. So what do I want to do is I'm going to say rounding to, the other option is ends with. I'm going to select round to, and I'm going to round up by $1 to the nearest dollar. Okay, there we go. So what have we got here? If we have a look at our work area, it's added all the products in. So we've got the same sort of selection criteria here to what we saw in the gross margin. If I select all, it selects all my records. Unselect all, deselects them, clear the records. We'll clear all the items out of here. Then I can add products in. If I click add, I can go in and then select my products from the lookup, and I can select any product here and delete the product. So the same sort of selection criteria is what we had in the previous work model for product gross margin. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to select perhaps a couple of records, and if we have a look over here, we can see what the calculations are. So first of all, we see what the cost is. So for information purposes, we can see what the cost is. So that's useful for us to work on the calculations that we want to do. We can see the current price in the price list. So this is the current price in price list 10. So we can see that no current price is in there at the moment. The base price, so we're seeing the prices from price list 1 here. So this is working on the calculation, and then we can see the suggested price. So it's going to do a calculation, 25% markup on the prices based in price list 1. Once again, come down here, I just want to highlight, we've got draft mode, and I would recommend that you put this into draft mode as one of the first things that you want to do when you come in here, just to be on the safe side, so that you're just running this in a simulation so that you can save it. By clicking OK, all this is going to do is save my worksheet so that I can go out and come back into it and continue to work on it at a later time. So that when I've checked everything, I'm happy with the changes that I want to make, then I can commit this by just removing the draft and clicking OK. This will then go and update the prices for the items that I've selected. We'll then go and add those items to price list 10 with those recommended prices. Up here, we do have a reason. We can select a reason code and put some comments if we wanted to. So what I might do is I've removed the draft mode, and I'm going to click OK. So we get the similar message, only selected records will be saved. I'm going to click yes, and we've done it. So let's go and actually have a look at that price list. Let's have a look at price list 10, edit, and let's just do a quick search. And if we have a look there, we can see our price list for those items there that we've just added in. So there you go. So there we have our two prices that have been added to the price list 10 from that worksheet. All right, so that was a very quick presentation on using the two tools, Product Gross Margin and Price Manager, to make recommendations for pricing. One last thing that I did want to mention on the forecasting that I did forget, so I'll just quickly go back to that, was that with the forecasting, there is a feature in the import and export data feature. I'll just bring that up. Say we've got a new environment, or even we want to use some historical sales data that isn't actually in our system for one reason or another. So it might be a new environment, or it might be that we've been trading for 4 or 5 years and we want to create a forecast from sales data that we've had from a number of years ago that actually isn't in the system. What we can do is actually import data for a forecast that is purely for the forecast. So we can import historical forecasting data that is separate to our sales history. So I just wanted to point that out. So if I scroll down, there is an object. So there we go. We've got historical sales for forecasting. So it's a good one to remember. You do have historical sales for sales reporting, but you also do have the ability to import historical sales data purely for forecasting, which will be separate to your sales. Well, that pretty much brings the presentation to an end.
Thank you for joining our presentation today. This concludes part 1 in our multi-part series on hidden treasures in iVend retail. You will find further presentations at knowledge.cityaccess.com. We look forward to having you join us at our future webinars. Thank you.